Jane Austen.
Kia ora and welcome to this episode of the Amateur Austenite. I'm Frances Duncan, author, Austenite life coach, and with me is Rachel Pilwer, beatboxer, book buyer, Austenite, and all-round nerd.
Hi! You can tell we're already having a good time at the beginning of this episode.
We're discussing chapter 36 of Emma, and it's good that we're having a good time now because there's a lot of Mrs. Elton.
Oh no! It's okay, we can get through this together.
Get through it. It's the dinner party. Mr. Weston and Mrs. Elton are talking about Frank coming. Neither of them are really listening to each other. They have different motives. And Mr. John Knightley says that Emma's now a social butterfly. She's like, dude, this is one dinner. I've been to one party. Mr. Weston, obviously, super excited. In the last chapter, he's just told everybody that Frank is coming back. The Churchills are going to London for Mrs. Churchill's health. So Frank will be closer to Highbury and can come visit more often.
That's all the Westons have ever really wanted. For Frank to visit more frequently.
Because he's come, what, once?
This is the first time he's met Mrs. Weston. Like when he's in the trip he's just taken. Boy doesn't come by very often at all.
He hadn't been to Highbury since he left.
Yeah, that sounds about right. And he would have been a child, so... Yep. It's kind of actually funny thinking about it, like that was his first trip to Highbury as an adult. Because obviously it wasn't just his first time meeting everybody, which it was, but it was just his first time probably actually, like, remembering all these little parts of Highbury where he would have spent time. And it just makes me think, I mean, harking back to my own life was when I went back to the UK 2 years ago, because I grew up in London. I moved to New Zealand when I was 9. Going back to the UK and where I used to live as an adult, so different. Crazy the rose-tinted glasses you have on of childhood where you don't understand anything. Like, how much of Frank's time in Highbury does he remember? Because there was a reason his father had to give him up, because he couldn't look after him. And so actually, what was it like for Frank as a child being in Highbury?
Like, he might have been neglected, so he might have repressed it all.
Yeah, potentially. We obviously know that, Mr. Weston was struggling to look after Frank, especially after his wife's death. Whether it was, willful neglect, and which probably, not direct abuse, but enough so that, was he going hungry? Was he staying out of the house? Because, like, how was he managing his own potential grief as a child? I don't remember exactly what age Frank would have been when he was taken in by the Churchills. Maybe he has all these memories of Highbury from his childhood that he might have been reconciling with as an adult that just is never explained or explored.
His father's not even living in the same house anymore. His dad's had a glow up.
And I wonder how that also feels for Frank. Surely he'd be happy for his father to, have succeeded again. But is it potentially a pain? Like, I think I would feel a lot of pain if I'd been given up because my dad couldn't take care of me and then he's thrived without me. Like, he's made something of himself. And obviously part of that is so that he can have a better relationship with Frank. Like, he's done it by the time that Frank is now an adult. But it wasn't something he was able to accomplish while Frank was still a kid so that he could get Frank back. Not that the Churchills probably would have let Frank go.
That is an excellent point. Because we don't know what Frank's experiences have been like.
No, we know a bit about, how his aunt, has been so dependent on him and he's so, indebted to her and is very, at her beck and call, or it's described that way. Maybe that's how he's described it. Because obviously he was taken in because things weren't okay. Was that actually being at the beck and call of his aunt much better than what he was experiencing as a child in Highbury? And also, how come people weren't helping out Mr. Weston more when Frank was a child and he had to give up his child?
Well, what could they do? Give him a bunch of money?
Yeah, that's true.
Because the problem was that he didn't have enough money to support himself and Frank adequately. Because they placed the blame at the foot of a woman. That it was the former Mrs. Weston, the former Miss Churchill, who had run through all of Mr. Weston's money and her own money. And that's why he was in a bad position and didn't have enough to raise Frank. Just like we blame Mrs. Churchill for keeping Frank away. If Mrs. Churchill were Frank's biological mother, would we quibble with her wanting her son with her when she's sick?
No, not at all.
She is technically his mother now.
Yeah, she took on that role. And he should want to be with her. And I think he does. That's why he goes back when he gets the news.
I don't know.
He would be more open to going there if it wasn't for Jane being in Highbury. Jane is the thing dividing his loyalties, not the Westons. If Jane hadn't gone to Highbury, Frank probably wouldn't have. He might not have ever visited. He had spent so much time not visiting them and had fobbed off plans, even before he would have met Jane, to go and visit his father. And then it's not until Jane's there that he's like, oh, I guess I'll go as well. Maybe that's part of how they bonded because of their time in Highbury as kids.
Probably. They're both kind of orphans.
Yeah.
Living with people of greater means than them, feeling obliged to those people from the same place.
Yeah. Obviously, giving Mr. Weston money wouldn't have been the best way to go about that. But the saying of teach a man to fish, it's like, maybe, I don't know, give him a job. How did he make his money in the end anyway? Do we know?
He went into trade with his brothers. So his brothers were already in trade. Prior to that, he was in the military.
So he wasn't really ever raking it in before that anyway. No. So it was more of Miss Churchill spending most of her own money and what little of his that he had.
But it was him being in the army that meant he met her. Army units tended to be from one particular area. So his would have been, the area around Highbury, but are never billeted in that area. They go to a different part of the country. I can't remember the reasoning for that. Like Miss Churchill, and that's how he met her.
Do we know how old Frank was when Miss Churchill died?
He was a couple of years old, I think.
Okay. I wonder if Mr. Weston was even home at all. Maybe part of the reason Frank doesn't go and visit his father is because he doesn't really have any. He's never had a relationship even before his mother's death.
They have had since he's grown up. Mr. Weston sees him in London and they talk via letter, but that's very different. I don't think it says whether he remained in the army or whether he gave that up when he got married. He wouldn't need the money the same because Mrs. Churchill would have come with a pot of money.
Become a house husband.
Mrs. Elton thinks the world revolves around her.
You're telling me it doesn't? What have we been reading this story called Mrs. Sorry, what have we been reading this story called Mrs. Elton for?
Mrs. Elton was very willing to suppose a particular compliment intended to her by Mr. Weston wanting to introduce Frank to her. Not everything is about you, Mrs. Elton.
The Mrs. Elton show. If she was on a real trashy, like The Real Housewives of Highbury, she would 100% be the star of that show.
Emma would be the star. Mrs. Elton would think she was the star.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what's happening.
I would watch the hell out of that show.
There's got to be someone that's done an independent web series or something, or even just a skit of The Real Housewives of Jane Austen somewhere.
That would be so good. We should look that up afterwards.
Mr. Weston, on his way this morning, found the letter from Frank. Instead of it getting back to Randall's, he just took it with him and opened it, is what it sounds like.
I mean, I guess if you're already going out, I guess it would be like taking a phone call while you're out.
But it's Mrs. Weston's letter. So it would be like meeting the postie on the corner and going, I'll just take the letters now. You don't need to deliver them to my house. But it's not clear whether that was what happened or whether he went and got the post on his way to what he was doing and therefore was just like, I'll take it when I get home.
Is it mail fraud if a husband opens a wife's letters? There probably wasn't illegal at this time to open somebody else's letters.
Does a woman have any rights?
That's true.
She is her husband's property.
Sorry, just had to vomit there.
Yeah, fair. Mrs. Elton tries to make it a cute little thing. Oh, I hope your neighbours don't follow your example. Oh, I could not believe you do such a thing to steal your wife's letters. It's kind of like she's flirting with him.
A little bit. She's trying to play coy, being like, oh my gosh, you're such a bad boy. You've stolen your wife's letters. I can't believe it. Like, that's how I read that. Every interaction she has with people is just strange. She just doesn't know how to talk to people.
Accurate. If this is what I am to expect, we married women must begin to exert ourselves. Maybe it's just another excuse to throw in. By the way, do you know that I'm married?
I'm married, and if my husband did this to me, I would hit him. I'm in charge.
So, Frank's coming. Oh, right, from Yorkshire? Enscombe is in Yorkshire? Yep. Maple Grove is not quite so far from London. But what is distance to people of large fortune? Your son may have money, but also my brother-in-law does. And he lives closer to London, by the way.
And what's his name? Mr. Cycling. Get it out.
Terrible name.
It's the worst name. I hate it so much.
That's such talking at cross purposes. Mr. Weston keeps talking about Enscombe. She keeps trying to make it about herself. Although, to be fair, that is how most people talk, really, isn't it? Everything's about them.
Is she talking about her own experiences in order to relate to it and in order to show that she understands? Or is she just wanting to talk over the other person and just talk about herself because she wants to be the center of attention?
Well, it's hard to tell,
It's a really
isn't it?
fine line. And it's really hard to tell in written word.
Because ADHD people tend to do a similar thing happened to me. Not trying to take over the conversation, but like, I relate. And some people get annoyed that they do that and think that they're trying to make it all about them. The joys of being Mrs. Churchill and being a rich lady means that she can literally afford to be particular about the way that she travels. Mrs. Elton brings up her sister Selina and how she is about travelling. Oh, but she's no fine lady. Then she's like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that she's no fine lady. I do want you to think she's a fine lady.
Yeah. She wants them to think that her sister's fine, but not as fine as her. If she's got money, let her fly in first class.
Right?
Let her carriage in first class.
And Mr. Weston pivots back to Mrs. Churchill. I would not speak ill of her. Isn't that what he's doing? Mrs. Elton again is like, Bath! She's being sick. She should go to Bath. Everything is about Bath. I know.
I feel like we discussed in a much earlier episode about polite disrespect. How being mean and like saying, oh, I'm not actually, not to speak ill of this person, but the sly jab, the subtle quip. She's sick, but she's going to London instead of Bath. What an idiot. I feel like Mr. Weston does that of Mrs. Churchill. He's not a bad guy, but he definitely does it way more than he should.
He's like, I just think she's tired of Enscombe. It's retired. She wants entertainment. Then, of course, Maple Grove comes up again in the most complete retirement. He doesn't even comment on that. He's just, Frank was here in February for a fortnight.
I always say a woman cannot have too many resources. I feel very thankful that I have so many myself as to be quite independent of society. Frank was here in February for a fortnight, and then she just keeps going.
Turns it to herself again, though.
He will find an addition to society of Highbury when he comes again.
The narrator literally calls her out for asking for a compliment. So Miss Weston's like, all right, yep, of course he's heard of you. Mrs. Weston talks about you in her letters. And then he's like, I've done my duty, and returns to Frank. There's a line that Mr. Weston says that's often quoted. If things are going untowardly 1 month, they are sure to mend the next. Just kind of buried in amongst his speech to Mrs. Elton.
That's a really good line.
It's an excellent sentiment.
I need that on a t-shirt. Okay. It's like a keep calm and carry on kind of thing.
I'll make a t-shirt for it. Then Mrs. Elton turns it back to herself again. I used to say the exact same thing to Mr. Elton when we were courting.
What, for all of, 5 minutes?
He was sure at this rate it might be May before, and this is the ultimate snobbery, Hymen's saffron robe could be put on for us. I have classical education. I know of the Greek god of marriage and the appropriate things. Dude, you're married to a vicar. You shouldn't be talking about Greek religious stuff when you're married to a vicar. She then starts coughing, and Mr. Weston instantly sees the opportunity, and then there's a big paragraph of him talking about Frank. He's going to come in May.
It's like them taking any single word the other says and then manipulating that as a segue to talk about what they want to talk about. It's honestly a little bit of an exhausting chapter. It's like watching a really boring but also intense tennis match. Or ping pong or table tennis. One of the ones where it just goes back and forth and back and forth. And you're trying to keep up with what the other's saying, but you're actually just listening. It's like having an earbud in each ear, and each one is playing different dialogue from each of them, just trying to compete with the other one. That's how I feel about this chapter.
Mrs. Elton refuses to flatter Frank. Mr. Weston's like, yep, sure, whatever. Talking about Mrs. Churchill. The hypocrisy in this next bit. Mr. Churchill has pride, but his pride is nothing to his wives. She was nobody when he married her, barely the daughter of a gentleman. But ever since her being turned into a Churchill, she has out-Churchilled them all in high and mighty claims. Mrs. Elton has a horror of upstarts, unaware that she herself is one. Talking about Maple Grove and the disgust of a family with low connections, giving themselves immense airs and expecting to be on a footing with the old established families. You mean like you?
It's literally just her talking about herself.
That is what you're doing right now. They've only been there 18 months. My brother has been there 11 years. I am pretty sure his dad had bought it before he died. So a decade longer, then this new family suddenly makes you so much better. This also isn't how it works in England. I know that in small villages, you're still seen as an incomer if you've lived there 20 years because you weren't born there.
That's the problem, I think, with a lot of old societies. It is so much easier to keep track of the generational wealth. There is so much generational wealth. Anybody who is new money is almost immediately cited. It was the same in America as well when a lot more people started moving there, and all of these wealthy families that had already set up shop, like anyone new trying to come in, just really struggled to kind of get into the society. That's one thing that I think is good about New Zealand's really late start to kind of modern history, is that you don't have any of these really old wealthy families like you would in the UK who have been there for hundreds of years and have just had the money passed down from son to son to son.
It's a very different way to think of people. And we like to think we don't have a class structure in New Zealand.
We definitely do.
We definitely do. It's just
a much newest class structure.
Mr. Weston, having said all he wanted to say, just walked away.
Honestly, King, he dropped his mic and he walked off.
He waited till the tea was coming round so there was something to distract.
I'm almost sure that old Mr. Suckling, which is just worse than just regular Mr. Suckling. I don't know. I just hate it. It's a terrible word.
Remember Jane Austen talking about, I'm not sure actually if it was Pride and Prejudice or Sense and Sensibility, but saying that she couldn't forget it like a mother could not forget a sucking child. Suckling. So Mr. John Knightley is there because he's dropping off the boys. We don't actually see the boys that much while they're here for this visit. I wonder if it was purely so that the letters were there for the game that occurs in a couple of chapters.
Because, I mean, I guess they weren't, like, overly written about during the previous visit. But I think the most apt, not description of the boys, but where they're most written about is actually just when John is wanting to leave the Christmas party so he can get home to his children for Christmas. That is, like, the most significant scene with the children in this whole book. It's just that moment of their father wanting to be with them.
He's worried that Emma's going to be too busy with her social calendar to actually look after the kids and saying you can send them home. It's not that big a deal.
I think he thinks one social engagement while the boys are there would be far too much, let alone if she had two.
Remembering that he doesn't like social engagements. He deduces that it's because of Randall's. The elder, Mr. Knightley, agrees very quickly, which makes me wonder whether he wants to avoid mentioning Harriet or Frank Churchill. And he says, I can take the boys. And Emma's like, sure. When I go out, I go for about an hour. You go for 5.
Yeah.
How is that going to work with the kids? They're already arguing like a married couple again.
We're just seeing clips of their future when they're talking about their own children. Everyone's like, I'm going out for an hour. And he's like, but you're going to be home. It's like, you want to look after the kids? No, you're going out for the whole day to do work. Sure. Stupid man. Where's your logic?
Mr. Knightley's trying not to smile. And I'm like, is it because they're flirting? I think it's because they're flirting. Best part is he succeeded without difficulty because Mrs. Elton starts to talk to him. End chapter. Like, it starts with Mr. Weston talking to Mrs. Elton and him fighting to get his information across and then just kind of running away as tea come. And then it switches at the end to Mr. Knightley. He's been having a good time. Then he has to talk to Mrs. Elton again.
Everybody's having a bad time when Mrs. Elton talks to them.
Well, it is a party technically for her, so I suppose she is supposed to talk to everybody.
How socially acceptable would it be to say you're going to the bathroom but actually slip out and leave? Be like, oh, I came down with a sickness. I'm going to go home and lie in bed with a warm brick.
I'm starting to feel poorly. Something like that. And people are like, oh no, you should very much go home and take care of yourself.
Mr. Woodhouse would be kicking you out before you could even finish the word poorly.
And take himself off to bed.
And take himself off to bed just in case.
Call Mr. Perry. There are ways around not wanting to do social engagements.
I feel like you and I, if we had been living in this time, would have just made a book with the list of excuses to acceptably leave parties.
Or we just don't go to the parties. We just stay home and read books all the time.
We're women. We can't read.
And that's our discussion of Chapter 36 of Emma. I've been Frances Duncan. This has been Rachel Pilwer.
Bye.
Thank you for listening, and we wish you happy reading.